Now to a topic near and dear to many of our viewers. Those are wearable health devices. Last month, the FDA issued a warning letter to Whoop over the blood pressure feature on its device. Now today, Whoop's CEO, Will Ahmed, is joining us exclusively with a response to the FDA. And it's good to see you this morning. How you doing?
Good to see you, Andrew. I'm in the green, so I'm ready for you.
Well, thank you. What's your number this morning?
71%.
That's low, dude.
It's a green recovery. That's actually quite good. Thank you.
Don't you like to be in the 80s, the 90s?
Well, it's because I trained so hard yesterday. You go up and down. That's how these things go.
Okay, so tell us what's going on here, because for those in the audience who may not understand what's happening, you had a feature on the Whoop. The FDA says you can't have that feature on the Whoop. You say what?
Well, just this week, we've pushed back on the FDA's claim that blood pressure insights is a medical device and should be regulated. As a little background for your audience, Whoop spent the last 3 years, tens of millions of dollars, innovating in the space and coming out with blood pressure insights, which allows you to use your Whoop to get a daily estimate of your blood pressure after doing a cuff calibration. And in turn, this feature will allow you to understand your blood pressure alongside a variety of wellness information. So alongside sleep, alongside exercise, alongside nutrition. And this is really pretty consistent with what the 21st Century Cures Act outlines as intended use. If a product or a feature is intended for wellness, it is not designed to be regulated by the FDA. The FDA's mandate is to regulate medical features that have a diagnosis. And you can see this with other physiological metrics where there's a wellness use case and a medical use case. So, for example, with heart rate, heart rate monitoring's existed since the 80s with products like the Polar Chest Strap and others. Whoop does heart rate, Apple Watch does heart rate. Okay, if you do heart rate for exercise, heart rate for sleep, heart rate for stress, that's all wellness. If you want to detect that someone's got AFib, okay, that's medical diagnosis that needs to be cleared by the FDA. And just to be clear, like we're pretty familiar with these different territories. Like we've done heart rate monitoring and wellness. And actually in the last 2.5 years, we worked with the FDA, we did clinical trials, and now Whoop has a medically cleared feature as well, ECG monitoring to detect AFib. So there's pretty clear lines of distinction for a number of physiological metrics, but for some reason for blood pressure, the FDA says that there can't be a wellness use case. And that doesn't make a lot of sense because there's an avalanche of peer-reviewed research that shows that blood pressure, not surprisingly, impacts your wellness.
So, Will, what do you think is happening here? Do you think there's an effort by the FDA to protect device makers who make blood pressure devices? Is it because they're worried that too many people are going to see blood pressure data and therefore take steps in certain directions around it in inappropriate ways? What is the argument?
Well, just to be clear, we have a lot of respect for the FDA. I think the role that they play is pretty critical in society, and we've worked with the FDA on a number of different features. I think just in this specific case, they've got it wrong. And it's in part because this is all new technology. Historically, you could only really measure blood pressure with a cuff. Whoop is one of the first wearables in the world that can provide an accurate estimate from the wrist. So that's fairly unique. And you have to, overcome past precedent in your analysis of that. But I think this is a bigger theme, which is, what are the policies in this country that enable technology companies like Whoop to innovate? And go ahead.
Will, I was just going to say the bigger issue, which I think is where you're going, is all of this stuff is going to start to converge, right? And by the way, we saw this whole issue play out in a very unique way in the hearing aid business, for example, right? There were lots of folks who wanted to get into that space, make it effectively a consumer product. Your AirPod could be a hearing aid effectively if you wanted it to be. Could you really say that it was? It wasn't. I mean, I think all of these devices that are sort of quasi pro/consumer come together at some point. And the question is how you think the FDA is going to treat all of this stuff.
I think it's important that there's just consistent policies and consistent treatment. The 21st Century Cures Act makes it very clear that features that are intended for wellness are not supposed to be regulated by the FDA. And the FDA should follow that guideline, which is the law. And we've seen the FDA do this successfully with things like heart rate and pulse ox and skin temperature and sleep and respiratory rate. And so in the case of blood pressure, there should be a wellness use case. And that's what WHOOP has put forwards.
What's the damage to you if they say no mas, you cannot do it. It really cannot happen, and you appeal the decision. By the way, have you talked to like RFK about this?
He's dead.
I met with Secretary Kennedy a few months ago, and I would say overall his perspective on wearables is that they're a tool to give Americans access to health data. I think he's generally pro-innovation and generally pro-wearables, as he's stated quite publicly.
So if he's watching this, maybe he's in your corner.
RFK Jr.
RFK Jr., yes. Thank you, Joe.
The other one's dead.
The other one is dead. That is true.
Still dead.
Well, I think overall... Go ahead, sorry.
No, go ahead, Will.
I was just going to say, look, I think overall the current administration is in favor of wearables and in favor of giving Americans access to health data. But this is really a bipartisan issue. This doesn't actually deeply reflect the current administration as much as it does what is the overall policy in the United States for innovation and for giving Americans access to health data. We've overwhelmingly seen really positive support from our members on this feature.
Right.
They're getting accurate estimates every day. They love it. They seem to be in our court to fight this, and so we're going to continue fighting it.
Hey, Will, they're playing us out, but I got one last one for you because I followed your company for a very long time. I'm a Ring guy. You're a Whoop. It's all this, but it's in a similar space. Have you found that doctors in America are taking your data more seriously? Because I find, and maybe I'm going to the wrong doctors, but I'll sometimes bring data to the doctor and they'll say, oh, well, that's coming off of one of these devices. That's fine. Now you got to go in for a sleep study or a this or a that. And by the way, when you look at some of the devices that they're using, the medical guys are using for the stuff, it's not even as good as the consumer grade version.
Well, I think that's right. I think that the wearable devices are getting more and more accurate. Whoop has certainly gotten much more accurate with our Whoop 5.0 and MG, which we just came out with. And I sense that doctors are actually starting to get more comfortable with using this information to talk about overall lifestyle and behavior and health more generally. Ultimately, these tools provide information that allow consumers to take control of their health. And our goal at Whoop is to help people live longer and healthier. And so that should be woven into the overall healthcare system, and that should be woven into your relationship with a doctor.